Meeting is now live.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for 2 June 2022. My name's Stephen Elchin and I'm the chair of the panel. Unfortunately, I can't join the panel in person this afternoon. The panel's currently streaming to you from the council offices in McMahon Street, Hurstville. The panel members who make up the panel today are Annette Rahotis, an expert panel member, Juliette Grant, also an expert panel member, and George Vardis, who's the community representative on the panel. We're the panel who have been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including the applications that are on the agenda today, in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The panel acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting is being broadcast as that of the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting of the panel is being live streamed and will be made available on Council's website. In accordance with the revised meeting protocols during COVID-19, interested parties wishing to make representations to the panel were requested to register a summary of their interests. 5 registrations to address the panel were received and forwarded to the panel. The panel has reviewed the registrations and advised the council officers they wish to hear oral submissions from the following people, who will be called during the course of this meeting in order of the items as published on the council's website. They are Aaron Sutherland for the planning proposal at 9 Gloucester Road, Hurstville. 3 people who made submissions: Fiona McQueen, Colin Baker and Janine Cannell, who made submissions on the development application at 15 to 17 Greenbank Street, Hurstville. And finally, one party, Ian McGregor, who would like to address the panel in relation to the development application at 47 Yarran Road, Oatley. The panel has received completed assessment reports from council staff on the 4 matters that are on the agenda this afternoon. The panel has inspected the sites and nearby locality for those 4 matters on the agenda. We'll deal with each application in order as published on Council's website, being the planning proposal 2022-0001 at 9 Gloucester Road, Hurstville, for the planning proposal seeking to amend the Council's local environmental plan. DA 2021-0401, 15 to 17 Greenbank Street, a development application for demolition works, subdivision, construction of dwelling houses and swimming pools. Thirdly, DA 2021/0398 for the replacement of a jetty and the erection of a ramp and a pontoon at 1/68 and 2/68 Llewellyn Street, Oatley. And finally, a development application DA 2021-0288 at 47 Yarran Road, Oatley, for demolition works and construction of a house. As required by the local planning panel code of conduct, panel members are required to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect of any matter on the agenda for a panel meeting. The relevant forms, as prescribed by the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment, have been completed and are tabled for council to be included in the online minutes of the meeting. No panel member has disclosed any conflict of interest in any matter on today's agenda. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who have registered to speak will be able to make representations to the panel. Each person who has registered to speak is requested to limit their presentation to 3 minutes. I'd ask those persons that are invited to speak to the panel via Teams that they speak clearly and at a volume that will project into the speakers to assist those viewing the live streaming so they can hear clearly what is being said. To manage the live streaming process, all speakers should leave their camera and microphone turned off until their turn to speak is called. At this time, I remind those persons that any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language used may result in the author being exposed to liability, for which council and the panel take no responsibility. Once we've heard all of the oral submissions on a particular application, we'll move on to the next application. Members of the public are free to continue to listen to the broadcast. The panel's determination of the applications will be made in closed session, which is not live streamed or recorded. The determination will be available on Council's website excuse me, once confirmed by the panel, and usually within 2 to 3 days of the meeting being held. That's the end of my introduction. So I'd like to call the first item, which is the planning proposal for 9 Gloucester Road, Hurstable. There is one person who's registered to talk to us. That's Aaron Sutherland. I understand he is the consultant for the applicant. Mr. Sutherland, are you on the call?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Aaron Sutherland here.
The floor is yours, Aaron.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and panel. As per your introduction, I'm the consultant town planner working on this project. There's a development application also lodged for this site. The site's been the subject of quite an extensive planning proposal from 2015 onwards, which came into effect or resulted in gazettal of new controls middle of last year. And subsequently, though, as a result of an anomaly within the Georges River LEP, the intended outcome under that planning proposal is no longer able to occur. And so this planning proposal is simply to correct an anomaly that's occurred as a result of that. And that is to introduce residential flat building as a permissible use on an area of the site marked as Area A, and also to exclude the application of clause 6.13 to that particular area. The planning proposal is supported by the council staff, and also the planning proposal does not result in any reduction to the minimum required commercial floor space, which is relocated elsewhere in a more appropriate location of the site on Forest Road and the corner of Forest and Gloucester. So we support the or commend the recommendation to the panel, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the panel might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sutherland. I think 1 or 2 members of the panel may have had some questions about the boundary of the Part A of the site that's being considered in terms of the this adjustment to the LEP, and whether the way the interface between the 2 parts of the site, whether that creates any complications for the development. Other panel members, did you want to say anything or ask any questions about any of those matters?
Thank you, Chair. Annette Rohudis here. Just a question further to the Chair's comments. With regard to the Area A that is proposed, do you foresee that that will have any impact on the design solution that the applicant sees for the site?
Mr. Chair, through you, I assume that's a question for me?
Yes, it is, yes.
Yeah, look, no, I don't believe so. And the reason is it's probably a case of the tail wagging the dog. So there's quite a specific and detailed concept that was developed for the site by Turner Architects through an iterative process with council since 2015. You'll actually find that in figure 17 in the council's assessment report. So that concept was developed. It informed the planning proposal, site-specific planning proposal, which culminated in the gazettal of the planning controls. And in fact, the DA was prepared entirely consistent with that. And so the Area A, rather than being, I guess, a random area, is in fact derived specifically from that concept plan, which has now found its way into a detailed development application currently under the assessment by council. So we know exactly where that line is required to be, and that's why it's been derived as such.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from any members of the panel in relation to this particular matter?
None from me, Chair.
Thank you.
Not from me either, Chair.
Thank you. In that case, that's the end of this particular item. Thank you, Mr. Sutherland, for making yourself available to address the committee and answer our question. All the best for the afternoon. You're welcome to stay on if you wish.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and panel. Good evening.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the development proposal for Greenbank Street in Hurstable, 15 to 17, which is a demolition of a house and subdivision and erection of dwellings and the swimming pools. There are 3 speakers registered to address the panel. Could I ask firstly Fiona McQueen, if you're on the call there? I think I heard your name being mentioned earlier on. Are you on the call at the present time? Hello, Ms. McQueen. What we might do then is move to the second registered speaker, Colin Baker, and if Ms. McQueen joins in later on, we'll hear her observations. Mr. Baker, are you on the call?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am.
Thanks, Mr. Baker. Your floor is yours, and please address the committee, the panel rather, sorry.
Okay, thank you, sir. By way of introduction, I'm a little confused as to why this is actually appearing on the procedure. The reason for that is that I understand this committee would look at subjective determinations for proposed developments, but this development is clearly in breach of several acts or sections of acts and regulations, to the point that there is 3 dwellings proposed for a block of land that's only suitable for 2. It's also proposed that those 3 dwellings are massive constructions, 5-bedroom houses, which is out of consideration for the streetscape. And in addition to that, I'm of the opinion that the purchaser of the land bought it for development, which in itself is not a really big deal. But he's bought it and has now presented something with complete excuse me, rejection to the feeling, the environment and the flora of the streetscape within Greenbank Street itself. It further doesn't acknowledge that house itself is part of the original O'Brien's estate, and in fact a family home of the O'Brien's estate, and one of the last remaining large block of land that reflects the heritage of the area that the council is trying to preserve. In conclusion, I'd like to say that if the council is anyway serious about maintaining the heritage and conservation area of the street, then it must reject this proposal and strictly enforce the local government acts and regulations. I don't believe that council can do anything but decline the application, and further to that, when it does, it should actively discourage replacement proposals that are submitted which ignore local living and flora environment. That is my verbal submission. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Baker. Do any members of the panel have any questions for Mr. Baker at all? I don't have any.
None from me.
Okay.
And none from me. Okay.
Thank you. The next speaker, while we wait for Ms. McQueen, is Janine Cannell. I hope I've got the pronunciation of your surname correct. Are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I also wish to object to the proposed development at 15 Greenbank Street and ask that the panel refuses the application as recommended by Council's planning officer. The proposal is highly intrusive and clearly an overdevelopment of the site and wholly inappropriate for the heritage conservation area. I've lived here for over 25 years and appreciate the heritage character of the area. And those 3 proposed bulky dwellings will dramatically alter and significantly undermine the value of this heritage conservation area, particularly the Greenbank Street section. I know that the applicant argued that there's benefit to the community in providing 3 homes in a desirable area, but the area only remains desirable because of the sense of space and separation, the appropriately scaled quality homes and the garden settings with mature and significant trees. And unfortunately, this development will destroy those very attributes. So the proposed removal of so many dominant trees, including the inevitable loss of the significant trees that it's claiming to retain, will dramatically impact mature canopy cover in the street. And certainly the trees and their passive cooling effect are very much needed closer to the city centre. I also note that the original development application failed to show the major conflict between the canopy of the 20-metre tall gum tree and the proposed dwelling on Lot A. So I am certain that would be lost too should this proceed. So I do strongly support Council's report that required the retention of the trees along the southwestern boundary. I think it's also worth noting that they provide an excellent screen to the city centre. So it helps to retain the sense of place of O'Brien's estate, because you don't see all of the tall construction at the top of the street from the centre of Greenbank Street. Certainly the council said everything that needs to be said in terms of the wholly inappropriate height, scale, building form, insufficient separation. I do think it's worth noting that the proposed dwellings are clearly 3 stories. The floors of the claimed basements are at street level, and they meet the definition of a story for sites with a grade of less than 12.5%. Therefore, I do object to them being referred to as 2-storey homes. They are 3 stories. And I suppose one of the key things for me is, as an immediate neighbour, the proposed earthworks to 3 metres deep on my immediate boundary within the zone of influence of my 90-year plus contributory home, I've no doubt it will cause damage. So the only last thing I would like to ask the panel to further consider is the subdivision. I know that the rest of Greenbank Street and the estate has a fairly consistent subdivision pattern, but the 15 Greenbank Street has always been a large lot. It hasn't actually been consolidated, as was indicated in the minutes, in the agenda. It's always been a large lot, and it is connected to Morris O'Brien for the namesake O'Brien's estate. So please do consider the subdivision again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cannell. Does any member of the panel have any questions?
No questions from me.
No?
No, thank you. That was a very succinct approach. Thank you.
Just one question
Yes.
for me, Chair. Ms. Cannell, further to what you just said about subdivision, you would have noted in the report from Council that during the pre-DA discussions, the concept of a 2-lot subdivision was raised with the development applicant, although they haven't followed with that. Would you agree that a 2-lot subdivision would be consistent with the prevailing subdivision pattern in Greenbank?
Well, certainly a 2-lot would be more consistent with the other lots that are currently in Greenbank. It's just that they've always been of that size. That has been the subdivision pattern from the very beginning. The point I'm trying to make about the block adjacent is that since 1918 has been that size. It was never a consolidation of smaller lots. It was never intended to be the same size as the other lots. I do think that's part of the significance of that area, but certainly acknowledge that a 2-lot subdivision would retain some consistency with what we currently have in Greenbank Street.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Cannell. Again, you're welcome to stay with the broadcast. Ms. McQueen, Fiona McQueen, have you managed to join the call as yet?
Fiona is on the line. If you just press *6, that will unmute the phone, Fiona.
*6, sorry, my apologies. I'm *6. Yep.
Fiona's there now.
I wasn't aware. Sorry, Kerry, it's ridiculous. I'm on the council. Hello, sorry. Thank you. I wasn't reminded about that. So thank you for taking my call. I live at number 21 Greenbank Street. I'm very concerned about what I also believe is the overdevelopment of the proposed overdevelopment of 15 Greenbank Street. My concern is number 1, trees. I believe all the trees, especially the ones down the left-hand side, are all significant. They haven't all been marked to be kept. I actually dispute some of the sizes written in the proposal as to the exact size of the trees. I believe the trees are taller than that. I don't know if anyone's actually checked those sizes. The trees, as we all know, are significant nowadays as we're going into climate change, which obviously council is very concerned about. The trees, all the significant trees and the other ones down the left-hand side provide essential environments for not only people but for animals. If you walk down Greenbank Street, property number 16 is right in the middle of the street. It is honestly an oasis in summer. You would not believe the change in temperature, the huge falling of the street by those trees, particularly on the left-hand side. And the left-hand side trees, if all maintained, would definitely allow the continuation of the wildlife corridor, which is probably only one of the only existing ones remaining in O'Brien's estate. There's significant wildlife corridor there. Like I said, I'm in 21 Greenbank Street. I see a mating pair of kookaburras every year in the gum trees. The kookaburras, even though the heights of the gum trees, because kookaburras are known to, go to very tall trees. I've once seen an owl, but that's only once in the gum trees. My concern is if the overdevelopment of 3 home sites, I think it's site A, I don't have it in front of me, the driveway there would be right up close to the 2 significant gum trees at the front, which would definitely stress the gum trees with resulting, I believe, danger to walking pedestrians with limbs, branches dropping off, which would be ridiculous. Yes, so they're my main things about the trees. Also, I don't believe that they should be called 2-story homes. To me, if they've got a car park or garage underneath, I'm sure they'll be, defined as 3-story. They're not in keeping with the majority of homes in the O'Brien's estate. They need to be called 3-story homes because that is what they are. And as I think one of the previous speakers said, the original O'Brien family lived here, so that is significant for heritage value. The one home with a large garden and large trees. So that is what I propose, and so basically I definitely oppose definitely am against the proposal as it stands, and would be much more in tune for two homes of 1 story. That's my submission. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. McQueen. Do any of the panel members have any questions for Ms. McQueen?
No questions.
No questions.
No,
None
none from me, thanks.
None for me. Thank you, Ms. McQueen, and to the other speakers on this particular matter. That's the end of the public part of our discussion on that application. Thank you.
Thank you.
The final matter where there is a speaker to address the panel concerns the house proposal, the development application for a house at Yarran Road, and Ian McGregor is on the call. I see. Mr. McGregor, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the local planning panel. Thank you for this opportunity to make this representation, asking you to support the strong recommendation from the Principal Planner and the Council Planning Department that this DA be approved, subject to the conditions included in the report. This will be the first certified passive house in the Georges River Council area. As outlined in the report and my submission to the LPP, the proposed design minimises the impact of an unavoidable breach of the height limit. The breach is unavoidable due to the topography of the site, which drops away by 7 metres over a cliff edge about 10 metres from the front boundary of the site. The whole building would be well below the height limit if the site was relatively flat. As also acknowledged in the report to the LPP, a complying building on the site would have far more impact on the visual amenity and privacy. It would also require extensive excavation of the ridge area on top of the cliff. The report to the LPP makes clear that the proposed design minimises these impacts. Both the report and my submission to the LPP make clear that compliance with the height limit is unreasonable and unnecessary for this development. The report also notes that there is an absence of negative impacts of the proposed non-compliance on the environmental quality of the locality and on the amenity of adjoining properties, particularly when considering the constraints of the site. I therefore ask that the LPP support the request for a variation under clause 4.6 in relation to the height of the building, and support the granting of the development consent subject to the conditions included in the LPP agenda item. Do any of the LPP members have any questions about this proposed development?
As chair, no, I don't, Mr. McGregor, but I'll ask the other panel members if they have.
None from me.
None from me either, Chair.
No, thank you.
It seems like a reasonably straightforward matter. Thanks, Mr. McGregor. If there's no other concluding comment that you want to make, we'll leave it at that.
No, I just wish you a good afternoon and a good meeting. Thank you, and thank you for considering my item.
Thank you, and that's much appreciated. That's the end of the public part of the meeting. So we will now go into closed session to consider the applications in further detail. And as I said in the introduction, our decisions will be published, or the minutes of the meeting will be published in the next day or so. Thank you very much.